Hello. Uh, this is part 3 of knowledge. Um, I, I've been delivering what was given to me in pieces, bit by bit. So it goes back to the original realization that the Holy Spirit gave to me, which was that I'm not a body. I'm free. I'm still as God created me, which is straight from the Course in Miracles. But what it made me realize was that I'm actually part of the divine intelligence, and we all are. And we're very tempted, because we're pulled in two different directions. We're very tempted to listen to the ego. But I think I need to say something about what the ego is. When I went through my realization, I realized that I am part of it. I say God, but it always sounds like it's arrogant to say it. But I have to reiterate when I say I am part of God. You are part of God too. It's actually right there in front of our face. If you look in the Bible, it says that Jehovah, this is in Genesis, Jehovah took the clay from the earth and molded it into a body. And he breathed his holy breath in to give it life. And that's how Adam was created, which I think is Adam kind, and we're all part of Adam kind. So it's the God within you that gives life to what you call yourself. So you've got a physical body, which is a vehicle that you run around in. But the thing that gives life to it is that divine energy. So we go through life and we're tempted, and we think that we've got to survive, which when we falsely identify with the body, survival means body survival. And so a system of thinking called the ego develops. So the ego says, you've got to do whatever it takes. You've got to get one over on other people, pull a fast one, cheat, lie, etc. Compete, but always make sure you're going to win. So whatever it takes, your ego says, that's that, you've got to do it. Course in Miracles offers a completely different answer to problems. It says, well, if you see a problem as a problem, you can ask yourself, do you want to keep the problem as a problem, or do you want a miracle instead? Well, since the divine mind is in everybody that lives, and we're all connected through this, we're all thoughts within the mind of God. If you have a problem, it's actually a kind of an illusion, because your mind is connected to the divine mind, which is everywhere and in everybody. And the fact that you have, say, a shortage is known before you ask. So the reason why miracles work is that God is inside everybody that you meet. Every time I've asked for a miracle, particularly to do with having enough money to survive, somebody's turned up and asked me to do something, do some work or help them out, and they've been willing to pay me. I treat patients on a day-to-day basis, but I never know from 1 week to the next how many I'm going to see. But there's a stream, and it's the Holy Spirit that keeps saying to this person that has God inside them, go and see him. So when I prayed and I asked to be solvent, God just said, yeah, no problem. Because every gift that we get comes through the hand of a person, but it's God in the heart of the person that motivates them to help you. So there's no order of difficulty in miracles, because God is the motivating essence behind everyone and everything. So this ego mind is it's the kind of curse that we all have to live with. I think Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said, it's a good servant but a bad master. And Shinryu Suzuki said, you need just enough ego to stop walking in front of a bus. But it is truly the not I, as I mentioned in part 2. So the relationship between the ego and the self, I've had several ideas to try and explain it. If my mind is like paper and I can write ideas on the paper, then my ego is ink. So you can't write ink on thin air. It has to be paper to write it on. So the ego only exists because of the true self. The true self is the consciousness. And thoughts in consciousness are like ripples on water. The water is still water. Whatever the ripples look like makes no difference. If you have a piece of paper that says on it in big letters, "This is not a piece of paper," do you know what? It's still a piece of paper. And whatever you think about yourself, you are still divine energy. Ultimately, that's forever, ever. But we live in a realm of diversity. Our physical eyes open and we see people looking different size, different shape, different colour, different ethnicity, different age, etc., etc., etc. And our ego says, well, we have to make sense of this. This is how we evaluate people. But the thought that came to me about people was that if everybody in the world was I beg your pardon, if everybody in the world was a statue made of marble, realization of true self would be, I am marble. Now, you look round the park and you see all these different statues and you think, oh, look, there's Bodicea, there's Julius Caesar, there's Winston Churchill, there's, etc., etc. But they're all marble. They're all one thing. Without the marble, the statue can't actually be sculpted. The form can't exist without the truth that it's written on. So the paper is the divine energy. It's the God substance, and the ego is like the ink that writes things on the paper. Or, if you like, the divine God stuff is like the marble, and the shape is like the ego. But the ego is a false definition. So once we define ourselves as physical bodies, it follows that if that's all we are, in order to survive, it's perfectly reasonable to be as ruthless as possible, if that's all we are. Jesus demonstrated to us that that's not what we are, and that was the purpose of the crucifixion, because he used the divine energy within him to restore his physical body. It should have demonstrated beyond the shadow of a doubt to the doubting people at the time that physical body is not what we are, that the body depends on the soul doesn't depend on the body. Now, he restored so many people's health in his work as a healer. He demonstrated time and time again that spirit has power over body, but people still didn't get it. They didn't believe it, and they didn't understand it. And the problem is that ego, as a way of thinking, has devised a system of explanations that says mind depends on brain and brain is part of body. So the crucifixion was the ultimate demonstration to show that Jesus' mind did not depend on a brain. It didn't depend on his physical form. And the universal mind doesn't need form. The universal mind, which is what we are, we're all part of it. It's like an ocean of consciousness. It's not dependent on the form. The form is controlled by it. It says in the Course that don't ask for the body to be healed. Ask for the part of the mind that holds the thoughts that makes it ill to be healed. So when God looks at a human being, God doesn't see Bodicea or Julius Caesar. God sees marble. When God looks at thoughts. God is not deceived by thoughts. God sees the consciousness that holds the thoughts. So when God looks at people, because God sees God in the people, he sees the breath of Jehovah in everybody that he meets. Everybody that we meet is actually the breath of Jehovah in a body, or consciousness, prana, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same. Our response should be, hello, you're part of me. Aren't you wonderful? What's your story like? What's going on? What you doing? Yeah? But when our ego looks at people, we think, oh, too fat, too thin, too clever for their own good. Because what we see is, we see statues, we see form, and we fail to realise that the form is only held in existence at all because of the divine consciousness. So God will always love us, whatever we do. It's absolutely irrevocable, because for God to have any bad feelings about us or want to punish us, it would be like me sticking my finger in a fire and burning it to say, I don't like that finger. But from my ego perspective, that finger is part of me, so I wouldn't want to hurt it. But then if you magnify your true definition of self to this universal energy, the universal energy knows the joke. The joke is, there's only one of us here. And we're all like fingers or parts of this greater cosmic I. That's the thought for today. Thank you. Amen. God bless.